The thing that I was going to bring up to you, and I know what you're saying, so I'm not coming at this from a standpoint of I've gone away from Ben Johnson. And maybe this is a little emotional hedge where I'm sort of getting myself ready to rally myself for whoever they name as head coach that isn't Ben Johnson.
Is it going to be like a fake enthusiasm rally that you're going to put out there?
I don't think I'll ever do anything fake. I think I'll eventually rally myself, but I'll talk myself up off the mat.
Okay.
And say, okay, this could work because of, and I think they've had worse candidates than Mike McCarthy.
Absolutely.
Like there are good qualities that you can say about Mike McCarthy or somebody else if they hire somebody else. The one thing I will say is at this point last year, the Commanders were the team who wanted Ben Johnson. Remember that?
Yeah.
They wanted Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson withdrew his name from their search. Look where the Commanders are today.
12-win season, 13 now.
So while we all say, hey, it's got to be offense, you can't hire defense, you can't hire somebody who isn't an expert on offense, they hired a defensive coach with a rookie quarterback, and they still were able to take that rookie quarterback, win the division, and win a playoff game.
Yes.
So they did it with Dan Quinn. So I know when you do scoff when you bring up other defensive names and you say, well, what is the plan? And I want to know the plan, too, for those other people. You've got to have a good offensive coordinator's plan. And everyone's saying now Jaden Daniels could be the best rookie quarterback maybe ever. Who are they saying that about before Jaden Daniels?
C.J. Stroud.
Yes. Who was the head coach for C.J. Stroud when he broke out?
D'Amico Ryan.
Who is what?
A really good defensive coach.
So the year before that, a rookie head coach who was a defensive guy took a rookie quarterback, developed him, became really, really good in his first year.
Yes.
And won a playoff game as well.
It can be done.
Wait, and it has been done now twice, 2 years in a row. These aren't anomalies anymore. All I'm saying is I'm in for Ben Johnson. But I also say that if you do have a really, really good coach, whether it's like, why do I think Mike Tomlin has failed? Can you name Mike Tomlin's last few offensive coordinators?
Arthur Smith. Matt Cannon?
Matt Canada. Like, you don't even remember. Like, Matt Canada was so bad. I don't even remember the guy's name, or I don't remember hearing of the guy's name before that.
Todd Haley.
Todd Haley was before then. He had a decent run with Ben, but there were like two between Haley and Canada.
I don't remember.
I got to look it up again, but I was looking, and I'll read you them in a second. They all stunk. Like you've got to get a good offensive coordinator. You've got to have a good quarterback, obviously. Like my whole thing is, and maybe this is me trying to prepare myself, you can still develop Caleb with a defensive guy, with a former coach, if you have the right plan and you have your ducks in a row.
There's no doubt. I'm not denying that you can't. It can be done,
you guys
for sure.
Forgot Randy Fichtner.
Yeah,
Randy Fichtner.
That was the name that who's Randy Fichtner?
Don't know. Not sure.
So you want to know why one of the reasons why Mike Tomlin, and I know you have some defensive stats, but Mike Tomlin, why they're sick of Mike Tomlin, before Arthur Smith, who's no great shakes, but is on the Bears list, it was Matt Canada and Randy Fichtner were his last two offensive coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
But look, they landed. Dan Quinn has always surrounded himself with good with coaching staffs. When he was the Atlanta offensive coordinator, he had himself Shanahan.
No, he's the head coach. Shanahan was his OC, yes, when he was the head coach.
Yeah, when he was the head coach in Atlanta, he had Shanahan as his OC. Here, he hired Kingsbury when the Bears didn't want Kingsbury. So all I'm saying is, yes, we want Ben Johnson, But I'll just point out to everybody, because I'm preparing myself for this too. So you want a little slice of Silvy positivity today? If they don't get Ben Johnson, it can still be done, as the Commanders are the prime example, because they were the team that wanted Ben Johnson at this time last year. They didn't get him. They hired a defensive guy. They developed the offensive quarterback, and they immediately turned it around.
Definitely
quickly.
can be done. Who's the best offensive guy that is available right now, though, would you say?
Well, I know what McCarthy is. I know what Joe Brady has done offensive coordinators wise. I don't know how good of a head coach he can be. But
that is definitely a question. There's no doubt. The last 3 years in Detroit, Jared Goff has averaged over 4,500 passing yards and 30 touchdowns, while they've averaged over 2,300 rushing yards and 4.5 yards per carry. So they can do it all. Like they're not it hasn't been a one and done with them for the last 3 years. They've averaged 380 yards and 27 points, followed by 395 and 27, 409 and 33. There's no question you can do this a number of different ways.
He's done that, remember, with a quarterback who the Lions took on with an additional first-round pick just to take his contract.
Look, I mean, that's just my preference. Like, if you would have told me that they would have hired Mike Vrabel and Mike Vrabel would have had an answer at OC, it'd have been all in. Like, in this business, if you ask me who I like and why I like it, this is where, this is my explanation. Is it the only path to success? No. If you hire a good head coach and he's got connections in the league and good judgment, that guy can steer you in the right direction. Again, you don't have a 6-year quarter. This isn't, Kyle Orton in his sixth year. This is the first overall selection who has played worse than 3 of the other rookie quarterbacks in the league over the course. We got to get him right. And could that guy that gets him right be a guy that's just an OC? Absolutely. It could be.
And again, I don't think these are anomalies. And again, I want Ben Johnson. So I'm coming at you from a devil's advocate point of view.
Absolutely.
But as you rave about Ben Johnson, they did that with Jared Goff with Dan Campbell as the head coach.
Yes.
Dan Campbell, not an offensive guy. The Buffalo Bills Dan Campbell was not like an offensive play caller.
I mean,
though.
he
was a tight end. I know he was a tight end coach, offensive line guy. But
I would call him offense versus
he's an offensive guy. But he's not a decorated play caller. No.
The Bills, what have they done with Josh Allen through the years, through his rise and his development? That was a defensive guy. Where would they have found offensive coordinators? What have they done in Baltimore with Lamar? That is a guy with a base of special teams knowledge. So when you look at the teams left in the playoffs, you have McVay left, you have Kevin O'Connell left, but you have
got a lot of defensive coordinators.
You've got obviously you've got Andy Reid left, who is the best of the best.
Absolutely.
But you have DeMeco Ryans left, you have Dan Campbell left, you have Dan Quinn left, you have Harbaugh left, you have McDermott left, who's a defensive guy. It can be done if you don't land the offensive coordinator, which I want. I'm just saying that this is not OC or bust.
No.
You just have to hire that right OC.
Amen.
So
there's more than one way to get to the top of the mountain, that is for sure. And part of my appreciation for Ben Johnson also is it's got to pretty much be put out there in front of you for this team to get it right. They're not very good about finding this guy who then finds that guy. I'm operating under the assumption that it's going to be more of the same. So I'm going to try to take what is most obvious and sell it to you. Instead of trying to find someone who then has to sell me on who is going to be the guy that gets the first pick of the draft back on track. I know that guy.
Yeah. Speaking of that, this was Bill Simmons, as I told you. So Bill Simmons, obviously the sports guy, he's a Boston-connected guy. Mike Vrabel, as many people speculated, was going to New England. There were some reports out there on Twitter that He did have a good meeting, a Zoom meeting with the Bears, and the Bears were impressed. This is what Simmons said about the deal getting done in Boston.
The Patriots hired Mike Vrabel this weekend, which felt like it was headed that way for 5 days, but I was getting intel that it was getting a little hairy on Friday night, and Chicago was making a run at him, and and you think like, oh man, if we don't get him and we don't get Ben, all of a sudden we're looking at the Pete Carroll range of guys.
So what does that mean?
How are you making a run at him? Are you offering him a blank check, or what is it? Because he hasn't even been in your building.
No, and they didn't are you telling him to hold off? Are you making him an offer? Are you telling him, let us finish? Because you haven't fulfilled the Rooney Rule yet. So I don't think you're prepared to hire anybody. Does that mean you liked him more than Ben Johnson? Or is that just a guy who is just throwing something out there in Simmons?
If you knew that there was interest in Mike Vrabel, and he was a guy that most teams could bring in or would bring in, as the Jets brought him in and the Patriots brought him in, if you were that interested, why wouldn't you do the same?
Well, that's what I said last week. Even if you really liked him, and I know Carmen and Yurko were saying, oh, well, George was enamored with the interview. If you didn't know what Mike Vrabel would bring to the table before the interview, you didn't do a damn bit of homework. Mike Vrabel played in this league. Mike Vrabel was a defensive coordinator in this league. Mike Vrabel won as a head coach in this league with a lesser-known quarterback. He went to the playoffs 3 straight years. You should have already known that Mike Vrabel was going to pack a pretty good punch. And you should have rolled out the red carpet for him, putting on your best face for him. If you thought there was any chance that eventually you would double back to him and say, look, I know you played for the Patriots. I know you love Bob Kraft, but here are the reasons why you still need to consider us. Now, again, this could be just Simmons getting some intel that may or may not be true. But that is something that he
that's why you give him a different experience than somebody else. If you know that somebody else is interested in him, then why wouldn't you? And you're interested in him. That's why I was adamant about bringing him in, because this is going to go fast with him. So if you're going to have to bring him back for that in-person interview anyway, why don't you circumvent the Zoom video and just bring him in and tell him how much you like him there and try to sell him on your franchise in person versus over a computer screen.
Don't you think McCarthy should go quickly, too? If New Orleans is interested. Yeah. Don't you think this could expedite the situation if they want?
I do. Absolutely. Mike McCarthy's not going to want to sit around and, this will be his 3rd head coaching job, right? I mean, he had the Packers, the Cowboys, and now this one. I don't think he's going to be sitting around waiting for you to finish up all of your interviews.
I mean, listen, it doesn't make... I don't care how confident you are. There's only 32 jobs, and only 6 of them became available this offseason, right? So if you're Mike McCarthy and you have a job offer in hand, the last thing you want to do is wait, tell that team, hold on, I want to see if this other option I like better might become available to me, when they could be interviewing people that are impressing them in the process. Like would you forego a job you have being offered to you at that moment for the hope that maybe just
most people would not, especially when it's home, when it's a homecoming. Yeah. Are you saying with Vrabel?
He won 3 Super Bowls
like McCarthy.
I'm talking about McCarthy, but anybody who has a good job offer on the table versus a possible job offer.
Yeah.
Most people will take the job offer.
McCarthy, was he the OC
in New Orleans?
The Saints for several years as well?
Yurko told a good story about that, where he did a game for Fox, and Jim Haslett told him, pre-game, he goes, keep your eye on McCarthy. McCarthy's going to be a star in this league as a head coach. And sure enough, he went to, it was New Orleans, San Francisco, then I think he took the Packers job. Won a Super Bowl with the Packers, then took the job in Dallas. They won a bunch of games there. Jerry Jones will read the statement, talked about bringing them through some tough times. He had to coach them through COVID and everything like that.